They ask us how the Talmud came about. First, we need to know what the Talmud is. So, to know how these questions came about, dear brothers, I recommend that you go ask a rabbi or look it up on Wikipedia and find many details about the answer. But since we have a new generation that finds it hard to study, I'm going to summarize the answer for you. We're going to see that the prophet Moses had revelations. Yes. What year is Moses from? 13th, 14th centuries before Christ? So, everything Moses receives are pure revelations, and for the most part, they are oral. The little that is written is kept by the children of Israel in their hearts. This will be the oral tradition. The story continues, and the teachings of other prophets are the same. Until the first destruction of the temple occurs about 3 centuries after Solomon. We're talking about the year 590 before Christ. Let's say 6 centuries before Christ, when the first destruction of the temple happens. A large part of the Jews will be eliminated, killed by the oppressive king, Nabucodonosor. So, the majority will end up going into a diaspora. 6 centuries before Christ. After about 50 years of exile, a large part of the Jews, or the Hebrews to be more precise, an Iranian king arrives. His name is Cyrus Kurosh in Persian. He comes, frees the Jews, and defeats the Assyrian king. When he frees the Jews in Babylon, he gives them silver so they can return to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem. When the Jews return to Jerusalem, they make 2 groups, Ezra and Nehemiah. There are 2 books. You can find them in today's Old Testament, the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah. It explains it there. The Iranian silver that the king, our ancestral father, my grandfather Cyrus, gave that silver to the Jews. So that means we Iranians are not anti-Semites. I am Semitic because I am of mixed Persian and Arab descent, since one of my grandmothers was a Sayyida, a descendant of the Prophet. So I am of mixed Arab and Persian heritage. Many Iranians are like this. We have a grandmother or grandfather who is a descendant of the Prophet from the Arabs. So we Iranians are of mixed Persian and Arab descent. Most of us are like that. Well, then with the Iranian money that comes to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, Beit HaMikdash, we're talking about the year 538, 540, around there. More than 5 centuries before Christ, when the temple is going to be built. So, Ezra and Nehemiah, they are going to collect and write down everything that is oral tradition, starting with Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and so on, little by little, over 4 centuries. This means from the year 538 until the time of the Maccabees, who are a group of priests that come to power and take over the government in Jerusalem, which we're talking about the years 130 before Christ. Over these 4 centuries, what we now call the Old Testament will be rewritten and collected. 39 books of the Old Testament for the Protestant version, and 46 books that are from a version that dates back to the time of Alexander the Great, 330 before Christ. And there he chooses more than 70 wise Jews to translate it from Hebrew to Greek. They will create their own version. It's called the Septuagint, something like that. Of the 70 wise men, they translate it. That version has 46 books, which the Catholic version comes from. Well, so up until about 130 years, 100 years before Christ, all those books are collected, but they haven't been canonized yet. Not canonized means it's not legal. Until we reach the 2nd destruction of the temple, when, for 40 years, the Christians are persecuted by the Pharisees who chase the followers of Jesus. In the year 30, Jesus ascends to heaven. From the year 30 to the year 70, for 40 years, the Jews, the Pharisees, persecute the Christians, they kill them, they torture them, and that's when the curse comes upon them. In the year 70, we reach the second destruction of the temple. The Romans arrive in Jerusalem, destroy the temple, and many Jews resist and die. A small group led by a rabbi goes to a city called Yuna. In the city of Yuna, they are going to reestablish, that is, they are going to set up the Sanhedrin again, the assembly of the wise Jews. So, in the year 90, around 92, they are going to canonize the version of 39 books as the Old Testament for them, the Hebrew book, meaning that is the date they canonize those books. When it gets canonized, then the group of wise Jews, the rabbis, who are now forming a group of scholars that study, because now they have the text in Hebrew, they teach it, because many times this is in classical Hebrew, which has no vowels, just pure letters. The wise one has to teach. A rabbi is a teacher. He teaches how to pronounce a word. He teaches the explanation, the details, and everything. So a group of rabbis forms in Jerusalem, that is in Yuna, and another group of rabbis in Babylon, Iraq. Little by little, they create midrash, interpretation, mainly of the first 5 books known as the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These first 5 books are the most important, which they consider to be pure revelation from God to Moses. It's a lie, but well, they consider it that way. So for them, 2 types of interpretation are very important. The first part of these interpretations, we can say an aspect of jurisprudence, is called halakha. And when they talk about mysticism, ethics, and such, they call it agada. There are 2 types of terminological categories in the Talmud. So, the groups of teachers, each group of teachers has a special name, and in the end, they will form the Midrash and then other books. Interpretations of the Torah are formed from the 1st century to the 5th century, over 4 centuries. This means 100 years before Islam, up to almost 100 years before the arrival of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Talmud is formed, which consists of about 30 volumes. That is, these are the teachings of groups of wise Jews, Jewish rabbis, over 4 centuries. So the teachings of the Talmud are also very special. They attack Jesus, considering him a bastard son, claiming he is the result of Mary with a Roman soldier, Pantrius, something like that. So they say that Jesus is in hell, in boiling excrement, suffering very ugly things against Jesus, but it's very strong what the teachings of the Talmud say. Generally, the Jews resisted not allowing non-Jews to see the Talmud, so it was like something preserved among them. Once all these teachings were already in the present time, the Talmud was translated from Hebrew into English. No more. We do not have a complete translation of the Talmud, neither in Spanish, nor in Arabic, or in Persian, nothing of the sort. So, to study Talmud, you need to go learn Hebrew, maybe a little Aramaic, a little bit of other languages from that time, to be able to fully understand the teachings of these Jewish sages. Generally, they don't teach it to non-Jews. and many things and many secrets are kept among the Jewish rabbis. That's the little we know about the Talmud. There are many more specific details that you have to go ask the rabbis.
Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.